I think what the Real News Network is doing is making an essential contribution to the revitalization of a functioning democracy that can really be a government of, by, and for the people, not just in words.
Welcome back to the second part of our interview with Eric Margolis, author of American Raj. This is a book about Afghanistan, it's a book about the Middle East, and it's a book about the whole issue of resolving the conflict between the West and the Muslim world. This is something Barack Obama is going to have to face probably even before inauguration. Thanks for joining us. Obama has talked a lot about the increasing troops in Afghanistan. I interviewed Susan Rice, who's one of the senior foreign policy advisors to Obama, and I pushed her on this Afghan policy, and I said, anyone that knows the situation in Afghanistan knows, unless you want to put hundreds of thousands of troops into Afghanistan, you're not going to fundamentally change the ground game. So unless you're ready to do what Obama has suggested in one or two speeches, something that approximates a Marshall Plan, which is something Bush talked about after '01, and then nothing like it was seen. If you're not going to do something to transform the economy of Afghanistan, you're not going to fundamentally change the situation there just with a few more troops. And she kind of sidestepped, and in fact, she got angry and walked out of the interview. So what do you make of what do you make of Obama's policy and the plans so far, at least, to do with Afghanistan?
Her reaction is typical Washington's reaction. Don't bother me with details and facts. I know what has to be done. As I say in my book, I think American policy is totally wrong in Afghanistan. Very few people understand Afghanistan, its complex historical and tribal politics. And this is a war where we don't have a objective in the war. We are fighting, the entire Pashtun tribal people now, we're fighting half the population of Afghanistan. We're not fighting what they claim terrorists, whatever that means. Al-Qaeda has almost vanished. If you want to wipe out Al-Qaeda, pay Taliban to go and hunt them. Or make peace with Taliban and bring it into an alliance, into some kind of settlement with the other Afghan ethnic groups, the Tajiks and the Uzbeks. Otherwise, there will never be any peace in Afghanistan because the Pashtuns are half of the population. If this war is about a pipeline, which I also think could be the main reason, then Americans, you better start studying Pashto and Dari and other Afghan languages because your kids are going to be there.
That may be the objective, and it may be a long-term stalemate is the objective, because they don't see any other way. But when you talk about the Pashtuns, I made a film, as you know, in Afghanistan called Return to Kandahar, and I found quite a difference between Kandahar, urban Pashtuns, and rural Pashtuns. By and large, the people I met in Kandahar were very happy the Taliban were gone, and on the other hand, people in the villages still had a lot of sympathy for them, although I think if there'd been my own view is there'd been real reconstruction at that time, anything was possible. But what now kind of deal can you make with the Taliban? I mean, certainly the urban centers in Afghanistan do not want the Taliban back.
Well, there are different types of Talibans, and the Talibans today are not necessarily the hillbillies who came out of the mountains in the early 1990s. They've grown up, they've learned a lot. There are peace talks going on, and they should be. As I said, this is an unnecessary war. Political settlement, as even the Secretary General of NATO has said, and British commanders have said, is the only solution. So who do you talk to if you don't talk to your enemies? We've so demonized Taliban that now none of our politicians dare talk to them. Let me tell you from my own experience of decades in Afghanistan that the Uzbeks and the Tajiks, who are in the old Afghan Communist Party, who are amongst the biggest drug dealers in that country, are just as bad as the Taliban in many ways, sometimes even more brutal.
Yeah, when we were making the film, everybody we interviewed was one, we don't want the Taliban back, and we want you to disarm the warlords because they're just as bad as the Taliban. I mean, it was a very much, they saw them as the similar forces. Of course, these warlords wound up becoming the Afghan government.
And supporting Karzai, and they're bribed every month with bags of US dollars to do this.
Now Karzai was interviewed after Obama's election just a couple of days ago and asked what's his advice to Obama. And Karzai said, stop bombing Afghan villages. The fight against the Taliban has to be waged in Pakistan.
Every Afghan village that's bombed, and we just had a case where scores, maybe 50, maybe 90 Afghan civilians were killed by U.S. Air Force bombing. Every time that happens, more people for Taliban. Look, what's happened now is that it's the inverse of what happened during the Soviets. The Soviets controlled the cities, and the Mujahideen controlled the countryside. Now the Taliban controls the countryside, and the Americans control the cities. That's not a viable proposition. The Taliban are slowly but surely cutting U.S. and NATO supply lines. It's before long, NATO in Pakistan, even starting at the port of Karachi and going all the way up to the tribal territory through Afghanistan. Soon NATO is going to find itself in a real fix, and it's going to be in even military jeopardy.
So if you get this famous 3 a.m. phone call from President Obama and Eric, what should I be I asked this question to another Sunil Ram the other day, and he said, number one, start buying all the poppy crop from the farmers directly, even if you want to burn it. Cut off the drug money as a source of funding for the Taliban and other kinds of corrupt forces. I don't know if you agree with that, and what else would you say?
Well, the drug money is fueling the Afghan government. The Karzai regime and all the warlords that support them are up to their turbans in the drug trade. Cut off the drug trade, you cut off the support for the U.S. installed government. If I was called at 3 in the morning, I'd say, Mr. President, is Afghanistan a vital U.S. interest? The answer is no. If you pulled your troops out of Afghanistan, will anybody remember Afghanistan 6 months later? No. Does anybody remember Vietnam now after we pulled out of there? No. Worry about the economy, worry about relations with Russia, worry about the Middle East and oil and things like that. Afghanistan is a sideshow in which you've painted yourself into a corner. Got to find a way out.
Well, the counter-argument to that you'll get from Obama's people and from many on the Republican side and in the whole national security apparatus is that al-Qaeda is a real threat, and that if you go back to a situation, if you pull out of Afghanistan, then you get two things. You get a massive civil war, and if the Taliban are the ones that win that civil war, you get back to a situation where you have a state that can be a collaborator with al-Qaeda type forces as a base for terrorism. That's the argument.
That to me is not a valid argument because, first of all, al-Qaeda was never more than 300 men, and most of them, at least half of them, have been killed. The rest have scattered around Pakistan. If you're saying, well, they're going to move back into Afghanistan, well, Taliban controls half of Afghanistan already by all estimates. So what's the worry about there? If they want to be there, they can be there. That is not the thing. The attacks, the 9/11 attacks were launched from Germany and Spain, not from the mountains of Afghanistan. They could do it from a school gymnasium in New Jersey, too. This is not a valid reason for keeping so many troops there. And the longer we stay there, the more we're going to turn the Afghans against us. And behind this, every day this war goes on, the risk of the war spreading through Pakistan grows. It's extremely dangerous risk. Pakistan could blow wide open and also even bring in a war with India.
In the next segment of our interview, let's just pursue this just a little bit further in Afghanistan, because my question is going to be, are you talking all foreign troops out? Are you talking the U.S. mission out? And is there still some role for reconstruction and foreign support for reconstruction? And we're talking with Eric Margolis. He's the author of American Raj. And if you would like a copy of American Raj, you could go buy one at the bookstore, but I don't want you to. I would rather you donate money to The Real News, and we will give you a copy of American Raj, even though Eric might prefer you to go buy it at a bookstore. So if you click on the donate button, you will find all the instructions on how to get a copy of Eric's book, American Raj. And please join us for the next segment of our interview with Eric Margolis. There are times when reality just asserts itself, in spite of the haze created by television news and entertainment. Sometimes crisis rips a tear in the fabric of myth and propaganda. Now a profound economic crisis has ripped asunder the American dream itself. Millions of people losing jobs and homes. They lack proper health care and any real sense of security. Since 2001, workers' wages have fallen or remained stagnant, even though worker productivity has risen almost 33%. By 2006, the top 1% of households were receiving 23% of all pre-tax income, more than double what it was in the 1970s. It's the greatest concentration of income since 1928. As unemployment rises, we need to know why this crisis is happening and what we can do to defend ourselves. Why are wages so low? Why is the society so laden with debt? Is it in ordinary Americans' interest to have $1 trillion military budget to project power across the globe? Corporate television news won't ask these questions, let alone try to find answers. Only a truly independent news network can tackle these questions with courage and with ordinary people's interests in mind. We need a news network that's independent of corporations, governments, and political parties. We need the real news. But there won't be a real news network unless we raise substantial funds right away. The current financial crisis has hit our funding hard. Together, we do have the power to turn it around. There are already hundreds of thousands of people watching the real news every month. If everyone pitches in, we can build an internet and cable television network that will change the face of media forever. You can organize house parties, talk to friends at school and at work, send email blasts and spread the word. Distribute this video to everyone you know. Pick up the phone and call a few friends and suggest they visit therealnews.com. Invest just 10 minutes a day to ask friends and colleagues to join the campaign to create a truly independent source of internet and television news. Together, we can build this network. Just 50,000 people at $10 a month gets us to our first level of sustainability. You can help us reach this goal, and when we do, we'll move to television in millions of homes across North America. Help us reach an audience in the millions. Please contribute generously. Spread the word. Let's make the Real News television network a reality.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.